G'day guys. Tuesday morning back at the lab. Yesterday I broke that again. Actually I broke it some time ago and I even figured out that I had screwed something up yesterday. Let's have a look at that and see what actually went on there. So we put our fluids in the diffs, topped them up. They had some, just not enough to run it properly long term or anything like that. So filled those up, filled transfer box up, ran the car for a few seconds just to check everything was not making noises and all that sort of carry on. It was much quieter. That was all good. Found the fluid that was coming out of the top of the transfer box, that fitting that was broken, all that sort of stuff. The fitting that I broke while trying to take it out, replace it with a bigger fitting, let's be specific, to put the breather hoses. So that was all done. Notice the speedometer was not working on the dash. Our Dash 2 Pro in there, hooked up to our Link Extreme G4 Plus 350Z plug-in ECU. Speedometer had been working in the past, was not working now. It's actually the same mount and the same sensor and the same harness and all that sort of carry on. I'm pretty sure I said it had to be something that I've done because it was going before and I've been in here, I've mucked around with everything and now it doesn't go. What I forgot I had done at some point, and I'm not sure why I did it, these wires here had been taken out of this Deutsch connector here, probably to untangle them and try and tidy up the harness or something like that. Our old mate Glenn got that wrong when he put them back together. So then the process is, okay, we're not seeing any frequency coming from the sensor. So those sensors are renowned for failing, so change the sensor. Yeah, it's still not going, but they're so bad that I wouldn't necessarily even trust a second one. So I put a third one in there. Nah. And I had a fourth and it was brand spanking new. So I put the fourth one in. Nah. So then I was like, okay, maybe there's something wrong with that channel. This whole time I'm forgetting that I've actually had that plug apart. So I changed the wires, shifted the pin on the ECU plug to a different channel. And it was the same. And that was about where I had got to with that video. It was getting later in the day, so that it had burnt up enough of the afternoon. Called it quits. Went inside, stuff and things, other life stuff, and then came back out here later in the evening. By this point, I'd figured out that there's no sense in running the car just to test that system. I'd figured that out pretty early on. It was just laziness. It was easier just to run it. But there's a better way to do it. If you have a problem with a sensor like that on the driveline, you don't necessarily have to run the car up to test that sensor. Here's trick one that'll work. If you have that sensor mounted in its bracket or clamped in the vise or anything, with your harness running off to wherever your car is, and then it just needs to see ferrous metal going past the sensor. That'll do it, if you don't crash into it like that. That's one way to do it. The other way, if you happen to have a lathe, there's some ferrous metal that'll go around past the sensor, and it happens that our harness is long enough to go from there across to here, so we can just hold this here in front of the lathe while it's running and have the laptop set up somewhere convenient that you can see it, maybe up here. There. You can have a look at the laptop and see whether the channel's working or not. So we did that. Nah. Alright. Okay, at this point I was like, it's got to be something simple that old mate Glenn's done. So let's have a look at I had already done a test for ground, for power, and for the signal to the ECU, for continuity, for this harness that goes from here to the sensor that's in the back of the car. And that was all good. What I did not check, that I should have checked when I was checking that, is that the ground and the power and the signal for the ECU are actually on the right pins. Because old mate, Mr. Glenn here, when I took this apart, a couple of them got transposed when it went back together. And so we had the power, we had the earth, we had the signal wire to our sensor. It was just on the wrong pins, so the sensor wasn't working, of course. So there you go, swap those around. Da-da-da, worky. all good. Everybody happy. Far out. Just good old human factors, man. That's why we have, in the aviation industry, that's why there's all sorts of checklists in the cockpit for the pilots to use. So they're coming in for a landing, they go through the checklist, because it might be the co-pilot's job, usually is actually, I think, to put the landing gear down. The captain might just assume the co-pilot has done it. Co-pilot might have forgotten the system, the warning systems might be faulty on that particular flight. Plane comes down, lands with no wheels. Bad. So you have a checklist to run through, and then these things are avoided most of the time unless someone doesn't do the checklist. Same deal with that sort of thing that I've just dealt with there. You have to have a process to follow, and you can't, as soon as you assume, which I assumed, that the wiring was the same, but it wasn't the same, because I had it apart, but I forgot I'd had it apart. So you make an assumption, there it is, it goes all bad there, and then you waste a lot of time. It was I'm going to say about 2 or 3 minute fix to actually swap those wires to the correct ones and confirm they were in the right ones. Just figuring out that that's what I needed to do was the thing that wasted all the time. Probably not as much time as what I'm making out of. It might have been an hour and a half, 2 hours in it, something like that. I said it was all afternoon, but I do have a cold drink and go on the internet and troll people who are bashing EVs. That's always good fun. Right, now that that's out of the way, there's still plenty to do. We've got to set up a channel for our temperature, for our HGT gearbox in there. That's I need to a resistor and a pull up and stuff and things, and that's simple electronics really. Then I need to set up a power supply and an earth and a signal wire from our gear knob, which is on its way. That's got to run into there. And this has all got to be tidied up. This is, I mean, from there just needs a sheath over it. It's not too bad. This kind of needs something better than that. Not necessarily just running it through the hole like I have at the moment. That all needs tidying up. I don't really particularly like the factory 350Z plug in this sort of situation. It makes it a bit hard to make it aesthetically pleasing. In the actual 350Z installation, it's kind of hidden under, I think it's in the front here, under a panel, something like that. Disappears, makes it, that's no problem. But really I used that ECU. I just wanted to show the capabilities of the plug-in ECUs because they're awesome. We had one on my 300ZX and it was easier to use a factory harness and modify it to suit. It's getting to the point now that we've chopped and changed things so much, and we're still adding bits and pieces now. It's really getting to the point where it probably is better to have a wire and ECU and redo all this harness and do it nicer. Time, funds, all that sort of carry on. We'll see. What I think I'll finish up with today is these are the under trays that were under the car, and as you can see they're quite second hand. There's a bit of a hole where that tape is that's been bashed through. Probably me crashing it somewhere and running into a skid pan or whatever off the track into the sand trap. These need to be replaced. These are really quite heavy, but ideally carbon fibre would be nice, but I need to make them out of aluminium first to get the shape for the carbon fibre anyway. So I'll see if I can wrangle some aluminium and we'll get those made up, and that's going to start wrapping up everything that's underneath the car. Still need to do that rear diffuser though. You'll remember that bit, except it looks a little bit different now. We needed those. We needed those because we needed to attach this. We also need to take this back off because of that. That is, well, it's too dark in there. Oh, you might just see it if I can figure out where it is. What if I kill some of that light? It's up here somewhere. No, we can't see it, unfortunately. There is a, here it is there, right in front of my finger. And we got it this time. There it is. That blue fitting there, the drain bung for the main radiator. is leaking. Never mind, if I figure out what washer I need, I can undo that, stick my thumb over it, put the new washer with one hand onto the bung and put it back together, and we won't have to drain and refill the main radiator, which is a nuisance. So that's this side done. We also need a tab on the back side of that frame that runs across there, brace, tube, whatever we want to call it, to attach the panel that's going to go on here. So they have to do that as well. Yep, sun's out and it's raining. I need to turn those lights off, and I think I need to clean the roof. Anyway, there we've got two panels. Three, sort of. I guess the splitter is fully attached, except for splitter rods. Across, this needs to be something there. It's not quite strong enough to be driving that around, not at the speed anyway. So we've got those tabs welded onto here. A little bit of grinding just to make it flush, not really needed or necessary or making it look better or anything. It was just fiddling, just being a bit fussy probably. So a tab on each side to take care of those screws there, and a big tab all the way along the back of it so that we can attach this panel here. Yeah, they could be countersunk screws really, but that actually takes a bit of tomfoolery when it's a thin panel like that. You kind of have to dimple the panel a bit like a lightning hole here, but much smaller, and then you have to do something with the receiving side as well. The panel underneath this panel, you have to have some sort of concave deal going on there. High performance masking tape, that should be totally acceptable for 250 k's an hour. That'll be absolutely fine. Now, the original setup, as you all know, that gearbox is significantly shorter. The HGT Precision gearbox, shorter, much shorter than the Nissan Navara gearbox. So there was a similar thing to this way over here. So we had somewhere to bolt this on, and now we don't. So I'm just having a wee think about what I actually want to do with attaching that to there. This panel is a second handy that's been chopped and changed. It's not a perfect piece. It's more or less a template. It's possible I might just make another one that actually extends through to here. And then we keep the component count down and keep the weight down, etc, etc. So that might happen. There still needs to be some sort of spacer in between here and here. This sits a little bit lower than what this would be. So there needs to be something happening there. Moving on from that point, obviously, we have a panel that will start anywhere from here to here or whatever, and it comes through to the front of the rear diffuser. There is a thing to sort out. That's a very important sensor. That's our crank angle sensor, and currently it sits below all our stuff and things. The plug does anyway. That plug off, we just get away with it. But obviously, so there are different types of Nissan crank angle sensors. Some of them have the plug on like a 45-degree angle, which is there's some of them in here, the same as what we use on the rear diff to get our speed signal. That one there, that would do it, except this is the wrong orientation on that particular sensor. So if we take that and we want to put it up there, it's got its little tab in the wrong spot, so the sensor would be operating at 90 degrees to where it is supposed to work. And some people think that's okay. It possibly is. We might be able to try that. If we put that sensor in like that, it'll actually make it quite flush and out of the way. So we might look into that. I know the spacing on the hole is different between the two different sensors, so you can't put that one where one of these is supposed to go, because it won't just bolt in. But it's something I'm going to look into sorting out, because it is sitting lower than what it used to sit, and we're going to smash that off I'm going to run off the track onto the grass or whatever, and the panel's going to get pushed up and it's going to break the crank angle sensor and the car will stop. And then it's underneath the car, very, very hard to get to. There is a hole in the bell housing at the top, around about 180 degrees from here. So the other side on the top, it would be nice to have the crank angle sensor there, but there's not the mounting boss or anything like that to bolt it up. That would involve a little bit of engineering to get it there, but hey, it might actually be a better option, because if we're at the track and we suspect we've got problems with the crank angle sensor, we can pull that panel off, the one that's allowing all the light through up there, and get to our crank angle sensor, whereas this one under here is an Epic PITA. Speaking of Epic PITA, some new parts turned up for that today. Some new brushes. Yep, that motor that's like 15 seconds old. A bit more than that, let's be fair. It's a little bit older than that. It hasn't done a heck of a lot of work though. The brushes in there, one is worn a lot more than the other, which says something about the quality of the carbon that's been used. And the springs have gone soft, overheated, which would indicate it's been overloaded, but this thing's never been run at more than half power, and you know, it hasn't done any serious work. I was using, I think it's an 18mm drill to take a hole from 12mm to 18mm with a flat bottom on it. See how I've butchered my drill? I'll have to buy another one to make our flange. So it wasn't cutting a lot of material and I was taking it pretty easily, and then we could start hearing some arcing going on. Another set of brushes. So if you need brushes for one of these machines, one of these things here, appropriately labelled, I bought all of them. There's no more in New Zealand. I bought all of them. There were 6 of them in New Zealand, so I've got the whole lot. Cost me like 120 bucks. They sell them individually, which is really weird, but I guess that's what you get when you buy something that says Germany but is most definitely not made in Germany. Absolutely not. Very, very definitely made somewhere that has a Great Wall. Yes. Never mind. Alright, let's just get on with something else. I put that down so I could show you where that other crank angle sensor boss was. It's there. You can see the hole in between the wires. There's a hole in the bell housing, but not in the block. It's a VQ35 HR bell housing, I think. And VQ35DE block. So the block doesn't have the facilities to use it, which is, I should have perhaps machined the block while we had everything to pieces and shifted the crank angle sensor. In hindsight, that would have been a good idea. I keep looking at that manifold and thinking I should make my new manifold. Alrighty, a little bit after 5. That there is the start of a new one of those. Obviously that one's quite second-hand, bit of a hole in it, and it's actually too long to go where this needs to go anyway. This will be a disaster, because this is going to be incredibly hard to do with one hand. Oh, it goes up there like that, except without the organic clamp in the way there. Something like that. So I could have left the front edge of that open, excuse my pearly white legs there, to get some airflow through for the gearbox and stuff, but it's just going to get caught on stuff. If I run into a gravel trap, it'll just rip it off and destroy it. So this corrugation gives it some strength to stop it. Yeah, really doesn't like those lights, does it? Yeah, it's reflecting from something. That's a reflection there of that one up there. Anyway, that fixes that. The corrugations are there to give it... Stop it. Corrugations are there to give it some strength, and also to give us some room for that crank angle sensor that I talked about earlier on. This will be pretty strong as long as it doesn't get any dents in it. You won't be able to jack the car up off it, but if we go in a sand trap or something like that and the weight is all spread out over a reasonable distance, it should be okay like that. We've got away with it in the past anyway, so we'll finish this up tomorrow and get on with some other things. Time to go inside. Thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.